Welcome, everyone, to the CRM MVP podcast number 102. This episode is not going to be a technical episode. I actually want to discuss the events that happened within this month, I would say, within the last few weeks, in which Microsoft announced that they will be taking over the local user groups or the Dynamics 365 Power Platform user groups. I think that for those of you who are familiar with the user groups, we would say that Dynamic Communities, the company that runs CRM UG, D365 UG, and all of the other user groups, along with the marquee events like the User Group Summit, they've had kind of a monopoly on user groups. And yes, there are some user groups out there that kind of leave within the meetup ecosystem, and I definitely went to a few of those meetings outside of the dynamic user group. There's one here in Atlanta. I don't know if it's still happening. That is for all CRMs. Like, I did presentations, and it was pretty interesting to be very effective as a speaker, delivering topics and presentations for users that came from any CRM. Like, I had a room full of people that came from Sugar CRM, from Salesforce, from Dynamics. It was a combination, a hodgepodge of users, and I was able to deliver a presentation for them. I think it was about authentication, or maybe it was about cloud security. I don't remember what it was, but every presentation, it was pretty interesting to get to see experts from other products too present. We kind of worked hard to come up with ideas for something that is applicable to everyone. Or I think mine was about automation or something. I don't remember. This was a while ago. That's why I said I don't know if this is still a thing. But there are other user groups out there outside of the Dynamic Communities umbrella. But for the most part, Dynamic Communities was the place where everyone went if you wanted to be on a user group, at least when it came to Dynamics 365, finance and operations, customer engagement, Power Platform, Power BI, anything that had to do with business applications within Microsoft, that was the place. There were a couple of other organizations that were trying to do the same, organizations that have been around for years, actually, that they just weren't competing. And I guess it was mainly because Microsoft really put their entire backing and infrastructure into Dynamic Communities. They after the convergence went away, they basically said, look, we're not going to do any user-based conferences anymore. I want you guys to be that organization that puts these together, and we will support you with actual money and with people, right? We will send our leadership, we'll send our experts in order to speak there, and we will actually deliver news and announcements during the UG Summit, which was, again, the flagship event for Dynamic Communities and for the community as a whole, not just the company, but for all of us. I very, very much enjoy going to the UG Summit, one of my favorite events. Today, though, my favorite event, still to this day, is the MVP Summit, which, funny enough, it's happening this week. Obviously, I'm not there. As you can see, I'm recording, and if you're listening to this, most of our listeners don't watch the podcast on YouTube. With this episode, I'm starting to record myself recording the podcast. I think that a lot of people don't really believe the fact that there's like no editing whatsoever in this episode. So if you're interested, you can go to our YouTube channel, the CRM MVP Media YouTube channel, which you can get to crmmvpmedia.com, and you can watch this on YouTube, and you can see me talking to the camera by myself for whatever many minutes this is. And you will also see that I have no script and no editing or anything like that. And it's always pretty interesting when people are like, how much time are you spending editing your episodes? 0 minutes. 0 minutes I spend editing these episodes. So anyway, if you want to see my post-COVID face, I haven't shaved since last year, which is pretty cool. I gotta say this. It's been 4 months now, and I'm enjoying it. My wife not too much. She's not into the whole beer thing, but I think it's legit. I think it's pretty awesome. For me, I was actually shaving more because of I enjoy scuba diving. I think a lot of you know that I'm really big into scuba diving. I'm a scuba diving instructor and rebreather diver, technical diver, cave diver, etc. And the beer always got on the way, but at some point, I don't know why, I just get used to it. Got used to diving with a beer, so now I really have no reason to shave. But anyway, the point is, if you want to see me, go to YouTube. You can stop listening to this thing if you're listening to the audio only version, and go to YouTube if you want to watch it. But if not, you can continue to listen here. So anyway, I enjoy the summit, but the MVP summit is by far my number one event of the year when it's in person, though. The summit actually started yesterday. I'm recording this on March 30th, which is Tuesday, and I wasn't really happy. Like I'm happy about being able to see innovation, being able to see what the team has been working on since the last time we essentially met. But this is the second MVP summit, the virtual MVP summit in a row, and I'm kind of over them, to be honest. And I know this is day two, but just going to a website, I'm sharing my screen too. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see my screen. I just want to show you, like, we have a page for the MVP summit. Like, you can only access this if you're an MVP. I'm not going to break NDA. So if you're listening to this, don't just rush to YouTube to see how I broke NDA. I'm not doing that. I'm just showing kind of the top of it. And it just says, like, MVP Global Summit, March 29th to April 1st. And then it has, like, you can see the session catalog. I'm not showing any of the sessions. Actually, I'm only showing one session, which is on my schedule for today, the first session of the day, which is very, inconspicuous. I think that's a word. It just says James Phillips and the Business Applications Leadership Team, Fire Chat and Q&A. Not breaking any NDA. Coming up about an hour and a half from now, we will have the entire leadership of the Business Applications team kind of online, and we can ask them questions about things, the direction Dynamics is going, functionality we saw yesterday, whatever it is very, very open. And, we get to have conversations that you wouldn't be able to have on a regular customer-facing event or meeting of any kind. So I'm really looking forward to this. I didn't add anything else to my calendar, mainly because I wanted to show you how those interactions with 40, 50 of the world's best professionals when it comes to Dynamics 365 and business applications have been replaced by a website. And I mean, look, Microsoft did a great job trying to make the most of the MVP summit. But for those of us who look forward to this event every year, just so we have the opportunity to spend time with other people like us, this is, for me, it's kind of like I'm over it. I really want to go back to the in-person events. And unfortunately, I just feel like this event costs Microsoft a lot of money every year. It doesn't cost anything to go to. You just have to be an MVP. And, obviously Microsoft has to, they pay for the event as a whole, the food while you're there and all of that. It costs them a lot of money, but also it costs them a lot of loss in productivity in terms of experts and all of that, and leadership teams being involved in the summit all week rather than doing the job they do the other weeks of the year. Now, obviously, they get a lot of value from it. That's why they do it every year. They wouldn't do it if it didn't make business sense. But I feel that by doing it virtually, they've saved millions and millions of dollars. And my fear is that next year they'll say that, yeah, things are back to normal. Everyone is vaccinated. There's no fear anymore. But we're going to do it virtually anyway. I hope that doesn't happen. And I know that, I've talked to other fellow MVPs and all of that. And we've said, well, if they do that, let's travel anyway and get together. I proposed we went to Cabo in Mexico. just to change scenery a little bit. But I know that at the end of the day, everyone is super busy and everyone has things to do. And I don't think any company is going to pay for their MVP to go to Cabo. So we're probably going to be virtual next year again. And I hope that's not the case. So anyway, I just wanted to show you what my favorite event has been replaced with, just a website and virtual sessions. But the reason why I'm here is because I wanted to talk about, again, Microsoft taking over the local user group from Dynamic Communities, basically. And Jason Gumpert from Microsoft Dynamics or msdynamicsworld.com, which is a great website. They've been posting articles forever. I'm a collaborator there. I've written way few articles, by the way. So Jason, I apologize for that. If you listen to this show, I should definitely do more for them. But I've had Jason on the show. I've reviewed some of their articles. I've appeared on this website many times. I was on their podcast once, twice maybe. So I love collaborating with Jason and with the people at MS Dynamics World. They do a great job. They wrote an article on March 12th when Microsoft announced their new plan to take over local user groups from Dynamic Communities. And I wanted to review that article with you in today's episode, if you don't mind. So we'll be reading, and then I'll give you my thoughts and fears at the same time. So it says, quote, Microsoft is launching a new, and you can read this, by the way, if you're watching on YouTube. I'll have it on the screen so you can read it. Okay, back to the article. Quote, Microsoft is launching a new user group program for Dynamics 365 and Power Platform that includes new technology investments and plans to get more new customers involved in local user group involvement. That's good stuff. I've always said that, in order for you to get new members, you have to, at least in the past, before Microsoft took over, you're going to have to rely on partners because they're the ones working with new customers, and they are the ones who can get people involved in the local user groups. For the longest time, we at Elevate Solutions had a policy where every time you did an implementation with us, we gifted you to the organization, to our customer, 1 year membership on the Dynamics 365 user group. Whatever that was. I think it was $2,500. I don't remember how much it was, but we knew that it was super valuable for our customers to be able to interact with other customers that have been through the same challenges and have struggled with adoption just like them and all of that. We thought that it would be very useful for them to be able to interact and go to those meetings, and we always encourage our customers to do that. So, most partners don't follow that policy. Most partners keep it hidden. I don't know if it's because of fear that those customers will start interacting with other customers and maybe learn too much and realize they don't need a partner as much as they did, or maybe they hear another speaker and realize that actually we should be working with that guy because he's an expert in manufacturing and the partner that we have is not. Whatever it is, like I totally understand why some partners might be hesitant to, let their customers expose their customers to other experts. For me, that wasn't the case. I always felt that the customers that we had, were customers because we went through a large and extensive process to make sure that it was a good fit and that no other partners should be a better fit. If that was the case, then they should have worked with them and not with us. We always want to be the best fit for our customers. If we're not, then we'd rather you find another partner that is a better fit, to be honest. So I always, push our customers to go and work on that. But if you don't rely on partners to do that, the only other company that kind of has access to all new customers is Microsoft. So Microsoft can see when people activate their subscription, brand new customer coming into the, the ecosystem, whether it's Power Platform or Dynamics, they can do a better job providing information to those customers, just like we get a bunch of emails every time you get a trial of Dynamics. Give me an email that says, hey, by the way, there's a local user group where you live. Here's the information. Here's the chairperson, whatever it is, get involved. So they will be the best ones in place to do this. And that's why I think that is a good idea of having Microsoft kind of get focus on getting more customers involved in their local user groups. Back to the article. As part of the new approach, will be Microsoft providing the structure and guidelines for forming and managing groups while continuing to rely on the community to run the individual groups. This is key. And that's one of my fears, is that Microsoft is going to try to run these local user groups. And I mean, Microsoft is already super busy the way they are. When you rely on local leadership to run those local chapters and those local groups, then what you get is you get the advantage of, people understanding the users that are coming in and working with them to establish dates for future meetings, to establish agendas, or topics that they want to discuss in future meetings. So leaving all of that up to Microsoft will be too much. I definitely think that Microsoft should continue to rely on local leaders to, drive the user groups and just provide logistic support, like meet at our offices. Maybe we can, which is something Dynamic Communities used to do. Maybe we can order lunch or breakfast or whatever based on the time of day. Maybe have some budget, perhaps for the leaders, and say, let's say Microsoft says, okay, we're going to commit $1,000 a year to every local user group, and the chairperson, like, they don't just get the cash, but they just have access to that budget. The chairperson of it, of the local user group, they can decide how to spend it. Like, they can buy lunch for every meeting, or they can just do a yearly meeting at a brewery, whatever it is. They have $1,000. They can do whatever they want with it, or $2,000 or $500, whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. I'm just thinking, have a little bit of support, but let the local leaders deal with the logistics and all that, or the scheduling and agendas and all of that, the inner workings of the user group. Back to the article. Some of the major independently run user groups organizations, like Dynamic Communities and Dynamic User Group, which I didn't know a whole lot about. I thought it was the same one, the same company, but apparently they're separate, have already agreed to wind down some of their own local user group efforts and encourage local leaders to align with Microsoft plans. I don't think, at least for Dynamic Communities, I don't think they were waiting for Microsoft to ask to wind down their efforts when it comes to local user groups. We had a full episode about DCI, kind of asking what happened with a company that seemed to have, like I said, a monopoly when it comes to user groups and events and all of that, even training to some degree. They are pretty much a non-player at this point. I mean, they're so small in comparison with the way they used to be. And again, a lot of people thought it was COVID that caused the issues there, and COVID, I think, certainly helped. But if you listen to that episode, which again, I don't remember the number right now, I think it's in the 90s, where I talked to Tony and Alicia, I think it was, about DCI and what happened there, and why all of their veterans have left, and it's just all new people basically, and what they were trying to do. You can hear that they were already winding down their efforts in local user groups for the longest time. DCI basically, until, I don't know, the last year or whatever, they really were focused on those large events, and they were winding down the local user group efforts to the point that it was very clear for years that whether you paid or not, you could go to these to these local meetings and whatnot. Whereas at the end, it seemed like you have to be a paid member in order to even see that there's a meeting. If you were a free member, you were kind of relying on somebody to let you know that you had to come. So I think they made a few mistakes in that regard, that make sure their efforts were, going down basically. So I don't think Microsoft announcement had anything to do with that. Back to the article. Microsoft employees involved in launching the local user group platform include recent hire and former Microsoft MVP Heather Newman and company veteran Gordon McDonald. Executive support for the initiative comes from the leaders of the Business Applications Group, which are James Phillips and Alyssa Taylor. McDonald, again, is a company veteran from Microsoft, explained in a briefing to the DynamicsCon Advisory Committee, which, by the way, Jason Gumper, who wrote this article, is a member of. The presentation was one of several meetings McDonald and Newman have held in the community in advance of the public preview. So anyway, they have been meeting about this and talking about what are the plans going forward. McDonald and Newman said their team will take an approach that empowers and supports community-led groups. Microsoft estimates there are approximately 700 local user groups globally today. That's pretty awesome that we have so many of them. And again, I think they're so important. McDonald said, We're happy to engage with user groups regardless of what platform they're organized on. So they're saying, I don't care if you're using, dynamic communities, GroupMe, or whatever, not GroupMe, Meetup.com, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. We'll support you. But we've heard loud and clear from customers that they would prefer a more complete community experience with more connection to Microsoft. I wonder who those customers are, but that's good feedback. We've heard from UG leaders that they want more support to grow their groups. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what more support is for me in order to grow my group. And again, I know I talked about $1,000 a year or whatever. That's not super important when it comes to growing the group. When it comes to growing the group, the most important thing is communication to those members who don't have a partner or have a partner that won't invite them or are just brand new customers that are starting. Right, that they should know. Like even from the time they create a trial, I would argue that it would be good for them to know that there is a local user group community. And if you're trying to decide whether you should go Dynamics or Salesforce or whatever, you're not even a customer yet, there could be some value on going to a local meeting and talking to people that have been using Dynamics for a while. Back to the article. The initiative to centralize leadership of the user group should align Microsoft and its business applications group more closely with the community programs of other major enterprise software providers like SAP, Salesforce, and Oracle. Those vendors all provide a level of centralized visibility and support for user groups that has been a challenge for Microsoft with its network of independent and often overlapping community associations and membership organizations. That is true. It is not easy to figure out what organization you should be working with and what should you be doing. It's not super easy at times. I think that the main reason why I ended up working with dynamic communities was because they invited me to an event to be a speaker at an event before I was even an MVP. They invited me back in 2012. I received my MVP award in July and the conference was in October, but I was already an MVP by the time I went to the conference. But before they invited me, I think they invited me in something like May or June or something. They already saw that I was, kind of a thought leader in the industry, and they invited me to be a speaker there. And then I became an MVP, like a month after that, and I was an MVP at the conference. It was my first conference that I attended as an MVP. Only 300 people. It was awesome in Seattle. I still remember it today. It was also Tony's first conference, who used to be the director of the CRMUG. Okay, let's see. With a new model, user groups that align with Microsoft will get access to online tools that include a new web-based platform and the option to add Teams as a component of the local user group experience. I think this is a wise decision. It would be great to have a team that is local, like in our case, it's the Georgia chapter, because we're in Atlanta, and have everyone who's a user in Georgia be part of that team so we can discuss dates and topics and help each other, right? That would be pretty awesome. Teams tenants will be assigned specifically for group events, which will keep activities separate from customers or partner tenants. Yep, so it will be a dedicated team for this. I don't know if I read that right or not, but Jason should probably review that one sentence. Users can expect to see a public preview in April of the new platform. General availability is planned for summer of 2021. Okay, so again, the idea is we're going to provide a platform so everyone can communicate. Web-based is cool, but Microsoft has had a web-based community for years now. That's where I started my contributions to the community. It's still available today. Is community.dynamics.com is the website for it. Not a lot of people go there. Like, unless you have a problem or whatever, I don't see a whole lot of people going into community.dynamics.com and kind of talking about what they're doing or their experiences or showing others what they've been doing with Dynamics. That's just not a thing on the community, even though there are some channels and forums in there that are about introduce yourself and talk about other things. But the vast majority, 99.9% of posts in there are about a problem or a question and answers to those problems and questions or suggestions, basically. That's basically what the community is today. So they're adding more functionality so we can stay in touch with each other. But I think Microsoft Teams will be a better tool in order to do that, because Dynamics 365 UG had a website that did this, or a forum or portal, however you want to call it. And every time I went there, I saw kind of the same 10 or 20 people. and they have thousands and thousands of members. So, going to a separate website in order to engage the community away from the tools that you're already using at work is not very conducive to collaborate with each other. But if you're already using Teams for work and you're now invited to another team, it's the same tool. You can just see everything and interact with other people there. I think that's a good idea. All right. So John Stipula, who's the president, I hope I pronounced that right, who's the president of Dynamic User Groups, which runs Dynamics Con, told MS Dynamics World that the change still allows independent organizations to serve the community. John Stipula is, by the way, the owner of a big Dynamics practice. I think it's called Dynamics Professionals or something like that. Dynamic Consultants, actually. Now that I remember, and he is a partner. Basically, he owns a partner, an implementation partner, and he's running Dynamics User Group and Dynamics Con, which has kind of filled the void that was left by DCI in a lot of regards. A lot of the employees from DCI actually are now working for Dynamics Con, and they're growing this event tremendously. I have no doubt that this event will become an in-person thing at some point and will probably become the replacement of the flagship event of the year, which is the UG Summit. I saw that DCI is planning to run the UG Summit this year in 2021 in Texas, which, as some of you know already, Texas is completely open for business, like no mask, no nothing, just come like it's 2018. So in terms of limitations and stuff like that, I think that by October, which is when the event is supposed to take place, they should be okay. We should be okay to gather in person. I have not submitted a session yet. I think that deadline for submission is the end of June or something, so there's still plenty of time. I'm recording this in March. So, but I really, really enjoy. I've never missed since 2012, so I want to keep going. If they do run the event, I think I will be applying and will be going in person to see how many people show up, and then take it from there. Make a decision for future years based on that. I have not been engaged with Dynamics Con yet. I'm not. I don't have anything against Dynamics Con. I haven't participated yet. I've been invited to speak at, just like many MVPs and other experts have. I just feel that based on what I see and the agenda and the sessions, they're letting experts kind of submit whatever sessions they want, and pretty much if they can find a time slot, you can present. Whereas I like the organization of the user group better, where they have a committee selecting sessions and all of that. Maybe that's the way they're doing it at Dynamics Con. Once again, I'm not part of their advisor board or anything like that, so I have no idea how everything works. But I just felt that it was more about like, we just want to break the record of how many sessions we can have. And of course, when you're doing it virtually, you can have that. You can have thousands of sessions, but I've never been a big fan of, for the regular user that is opening a website and seeing that there is 187 different sessions I can go at 10 a.m. I mean, how is that beneficial or easy for someone to choose? I like the idea of paths, where if you're a CRM administrator, you can go on that track and take all the admin sessions, and they try to not put 2, 3, 4 admin sessions at the same time, so you can, take them all. Like, the logistics seems to be, just looking at it from the outside, seem to be better on the dynamic communities side with the UG. They really, really spent a lot of time to perfect that, and they did a good job. Dynamics Con, I'm not sure. But John says, we're excited about Microsoft's new plan to take a more direct role in leading community engagement with Dynamics in the Power Platform. As a longtime supporter of our amazing community, I believe it's great whenever anyone works towards building new relationships or growing awareness around the business application suite Microsoft ships globally. And though the newest announcements show that Microsoft will be increasing their outreach, I strongly believe there will always remain the need for an independent lens like Dynamic User Group to provide balanced support to our community. I don't know about independent lens. When you are the owner of a partner and you're running the user group and you determine what sessions are being taught and you determine who the speakers are and all of that, how much of that is an independent lens? And again, I don't know John, so maybe he is someone who I can trust, but just from knowing the practice, directors and leaders from other partners, I always know that there's a little bit of bias there. Maybe that's not the case here, but that is my concern. Just because I don't know him. For example, I know that Ian Connolly and Mark Christie in Scotland work for a partner. They actually own an implementation partner, but I know them personally. And I've been a speaker at the Scottish Summit, which it's becoming kind of like the flagship event for sure in Europe, for sure. I don't know if globally we're ready to say that they are the flagship event, but it's definitely an event that everyone should attend. I mean, the speakers are top notch, and Mark and Ian, though, do such a good job organizing these events. And I know that they're both MVPs and they both have zero motivation or ulterior motive or bias when it comes to selecting speakers and letting other people speak. Like, I've seen direct competitors locally to them have amazing speaking, slots at Scottish Summit. These guys are kind of like out the window. I don't care what happens to the business. This is completely separate. This is what I do as an MVP, and that's why they're both Microsoft MVPs. Whereas every time I hear that such and such person from a partner is trying to do an event, like, I know Hitachi has events. I know that the people from Power Objects, whatever the new name is, HCL, I think, I know they have their own local events. Like, would I send my customers to the Hitachi Summit or the Power Platform Summit or whatever the Power Objects call theirs, or the next? Like, I wouldn't do that. And even if they don't call it the Hitachi Summit, I just made that up, I would think that Hitachi had a hand on it. Like, I might be wrong, but that would be my first thing, my first, thought. Whereas Mark and Ian, I wouldn't for a second think they had anything to do with being biased and picking the right speakers or whatever. Those guys are legit. Those guys are awesome. You should also attend the Scottish Summit every year. So anyway, that is my fear with groups like Dynamics User Group run by a partner, not John specifically. This is not an attack on him. This is just a partner. Whereas Dynamic Communities was run by people that were not partners. They couldn't care less if me or whoever got an implementation project. They did not implement Dynamics. They do not sell Dynamics. They don't sell any IP. They don't care. So for them, it was all about, we're going to put a committee together filled of people that are in the industry. They get to pick. We don't care. As long as we provide value to users, who cares? With a conference led by a partner or a user group led by a partner, I am a little bit more concerned. Again, not an attack on John, just any partner. It doesn't matter. With 25 years serving the community, Dynamics User Group will continue to offer programs for users and professionals to grow their skills, troubleshoot problems, and network with colleagues. I think that the Dynamic community from Microsoft does that. But I have never worked with Dynamic User Group. Maybe I should check it out. We think our program pairs well with what Microsoft has planned and hope to expand upon our Dynamics Con events, as well as our new Skill Up platform. I don't know what that is, to complement the enhanced community activities on the horizon. As part of the transition, Microsoft representatives said they expect existing local groups to continue to operate normally. While there will be new meeting tools coming, each individual group remains free to organize however they choose, Microsoft says, and whatever tools they want to use. This is great. Like I said, leave it up to the local users to kind of self-police and do all of that. I do wonder, though, now that I said self-police, it reminded me of who will be the authority when it comes to violations of the rules of the local user groups. There's not a whole lot of rules about them, other than we're all there to learn from each other and we're all there to share our expertise, not to recruit people, right? And this is more specifically for partners. And I have seen personally, I mean, just blatant violations of this code, where a partner, somebody who works for a partner will go in and they literally just pass their business cards and they'll try to tell people like, can I come to your office and talk to you about my product or whatever. That turns people off, and it definitely turns me off. I've reported people like that before. Like, I'm not a whistleblower or whatever. Like, I don't like to accuse anybody unless they violated big time. And I've seen pretty big time violations where people are like, oh, hi, who are you? Where do you work? And, they'll be like, oh, I work for, I don't know, a bank or whatever. We use Dynamics. And the guy will be like, oh, that's awesome. Can I come to your office and talk to you guys about insert product name here and our services? That is a violation of it. So someone needs to police that. And dynamic communities used to do that. They would reach out to the person and say, you're not welcome anymore. Or if you go again, don't do it again. That kind of thing. I would just pass the information and they would deal with it. Who will do that now? Would that be up to the local user, leadership to police that and, essentially act as an enforcer of the rules when it comes to the local meetings? I don't know, but that will be something interesting. I would love to work with Microsoft on that to try to figure out a way to do it. But aligning with Microsoft new plans could have other ancillary benefits in addition to the new digital tools. For example, the community team plans to support groups in a variety of ways, like streamlining efforts, to get access to local office facilities for meetings and events when possible, and connecting Microsoft employees with group meetings. So if you need speakers or whatever and someone is local, you could connect with one of those speakers and have them present, or come and do a Q&A or whatever it is. That is pretty cool. We're almost done with the article. The community team's efforts are not without challenges too. So far, the team appears to be quite small, though they have noted plans to bring in more resources. Historically, local user groups networks in the Dynamics and Power Platform space have required a large team of people, some dedicated to individual products and some others focus on cross-group organizational needs. And user groups are known to sometimes suffer from interpersonal and intergroup conflicts that requires resolution through mediation or more heavy-handed measures. The use of Microsoft Teams in concert with the community website should prove another interesting challenge. Teams has been adding new integrations and quickly evolving with other features like a webinar format, but the needs of cross-organization user groups could require even more unique use cases. Microsoft will be talking more about their user group plans on the first evening of Dynamic Con, which again is the conference from the Dynamic User Group. You can expect to see even more about these plans on the Microsoft Business Application Summit 2021. So that's the end of the article. Again, thanks again to Jason for writing this up and allowing us to review it. So here are my thoughts on it. Like I mentioned, I fear that anything that is driven by partners will have a bias, or if it doesn't have a bias, that users themselves will see that as a potential for a bias. Anytime you see an article from a vendor talking about their product, it doesn't matter how they title the article. You will always think there's bias. So I'll use a non-Dynamics product, for example. If you saw an article written by Nike talking about the best tennis shoes in the market for 2021, come on. Like, even if whoever wrote it has no bias, for real, has no bias, just because someone from Nike is involved in writing that article, I'm going to believe there's bias. I don't care what the person says. They could be a saint. They could be trashing Nike in the article. I would still be like, well, what's the catch? I'm still going to be looking for, what's going on. So that's how I feel about user groups and conferences that are led by partners or led by people who own partner, organizations or implementation practices. I always feel that way. I think that a lot of users feel that way. So if we want to grow our local user groups, we need to rely on local leaders, hopefully users. Hopefully those leaders will be users. But if partners, then hopefully MVPs that can lead these groups. And I don't want to say that MVPs are the only, we are so special that no one would ever be able to handle a local user group? No, of course not. There are partners out there that can do this. I just fear that when you have something that is clearly led by a partner, that people are hesitant to participate. If you know that the chairperson is the practice director for implementations or us, you will be like, well, I'm probably going to see a whole lot of implementations or us type of content. That's just my fear on that. There's a lot of, I just feel that also another red flag is that by Microsoft taking a stab at local user group support and all of this, that like the community and like other things within Microsoft, they lack like a leader. Like I hope that there is a person like the Tony Stein of Dynamic User Group. I hope that there is someone like that leading the local user groups, because those are the people that can affect change and they can really push for having, let's say, more interaction from customers, push from having partners that are blatantly violating standards and rules when it comes to these events kicked out of the community. All of those things, you need someone who's a leader for it. And I think that for Microsoft, since they haven't done this in the past, at least on the dynamic side, they could rely on some of those local leaders too to help them build that leadership. For example, I would envision that you could have someone who can lead a territory, let's just say. So you take, I don't know, one or two leaders from the southeast of the United States or from northwestern Europe or whatever, right? You split them into territories, and now you have someone kind of overseeing the whole territory and all of the user groups below it, right? Start like that. It's still decentralized enough, but you have someone who can help you drive these territories along the way, at least the first year and whatnot. Having that level of expertise, I think it can be very beneficial rather than just throwing somebody like I've seen people, they get pulled from, like, they used to work at Google or something, and now all of a sudden, here you go, director of user groups globally. It's a big jump. So, try to work with your current leaders to figure that out, I would say. So that would be a red flag, is, again, just trying to have Microsoft lead everything from scratch without relying on the local leaders, even at a higher level, like I said, territory or nationally or whatever it is. But other than that, I don't know where this is going to go. I think that community as a whole, includes the local meetings. You need the local meetings. You need also the larger events like the User Group Summit or Dynamics Con or whatever, Microsoft Convergence. I don't care how they call it. We need events like that because people like to network with each other. There are things you can learn in 5 minutes that it will take you. It's sometimes impossible to do it in local meetings. Like, just the concept of the Medics booth, for example, that we had at the User Group Summit. I've been at the Medics booth before where people get there with a big problem, like with a laptop. Like, they put a laptop on the Medics booth and they're like, look at this, like nothing is working or whatever. And within 5 minutes between, 2 or 3 of the experts on the booth, we can fix a problem like that. You can't really do that at a local meeting that has an agenda, and, you do leave time for Q&A and just open table discussions, but that level of service, that level of access to experts, the one-on-one type of conversation, you can't reproduce that virtually. It's just not going to work. You can't have those conversations virtually. You can try to fake it. You can try to say, like, no, I bet that if we use cameras, you can try to make it work, but there's no replacement to having 20 MVPs and Microsoft people, experts, right, in a place, and you having access to all of them at once. Like, I've received people that come to me with a problem in the Medics booth, and somebody watching this or listening to this probably have been one of those people. Come to me with a problem. I have no idea how to solve it. I can just look to my right and be like, hey, Daryl, or whoever, like, that I know that will be better at it than me, come here and help me out. In Australia, that was the case. We had a Medics booth during the Australian Summit, or the APAC Summit, whatever it was called, and like, a lot of people kept coming in for questions about ERP, like it was finance and operations, or whether it was Business Central, whatever it was. it was awesome to be able to turn around and be like, Rachel, who used to be an MVP, now works for Microsoft, Rachel Profit. I'll be like, Rachel, can you answer this question? Somebody will come in with a Power BI problem. I'll be able to turn and be like, hey, you, help, those interactions and cross-platform things. And some people would come in with a Dynamics issue, but they also had an issue about Power BI or something else. Getting those answers all together in an event like that are very valuable. So if Microsoft says that they have no interest in doing that, but they're running the local user groups, what is that connection going to be like? Right? How do you go from a local user group to a large event to having a community where you can ask questions? Like all of those, I believe, are interesting parts. And we haven't even talked about training. Let's say some other third-party company, some other company, and I know Microsoft has some training, but the Microsoft training and real-world training can be different things. But that's, I think, for another episode. So will another company come up that offers real-world training? Now you have 4 different moving parts. Somebody running the local thing, somebody running the forum and the virtual stuff, somebody running the large events that are in person, somebody running training. All of these things, working together seamlessly for a user just sound like it's complicated. That's just my thoughts on it. I don't know how you guys feel about it. Are you excited that Microsoft will be taking over local user groups? Are you kind of hesitant like me that maybe the picture is not super clear right now? I'm excited. Last week, I talked to someone at Microsoft. I'm not going to disclose names or anything like that, but I talked to that person for over an hour about some of the ways I would tackle this thing if they're really going to be taking over local user groups. And I made some recommendations. Like me, I'm sure they are talking to other leaders in the industry and in the community as well. And I assume that they will take a lot of those best practices and come up with the best way to do it. I think that there's a ton of potential, especially when it comes to brand new members. Microsoft knows everyone basically when they sign up, so they're positioned better than anyone to be able to grow new membership into these groups. But I don't know if they are on the right position to be able to drive growth after that and to be able to organize these other big events. They've done it in the past. They can do it again, but I don't know if there's the want to do that. Because here's the other thing, and I'll wrap up with this. My final red flag, and I did mention this on my call. Based on my experience as an MVP and the fact that I've been to dozens of conferences at this point, Microsoft is really good and really passionate about talking about things that are coming in the future. They're really, really passionate about, let me show you what we're working on. We've heard you, and here's what's coming. They are always excited about, let me show you AI, let me show you Dataverse, and let me show you CD or whatever, Dataverse for Teams. They are really, really good at presenting what's coming. But the problem is that the people that go into these local user groups are excited about learning how to use what they have. They really want to understand what is it that they bought, what is it that they implemented, how can their company get a bigger return of investment on what they're paying in terms of licensing and maintenance and report and all of that. That's what the vast majority of people in these user groups want. Do they want to see what's coming in the future and all of that? Absolutely. But most importantly, I would say priority number 1 is, how about you help me use what I have, what I already paid for, right? How can I get better at doing that? Then we'll talk about what's coming, right? Don't sell me something new if I'm still struggling to use what I already bought. Microsoft doesn't have a great track record figuring out how to present and talk about and deliver sessions on things that are old, right? A session in which you're talking to people about, I don't know, case management. They're not the greatest at that. Now, there is some people at Microsoft that can do this very well. Scott Sewell, who I feature in this episode multiple times, former MVP implementer. Scott is a superstar. If Microsoft wanted to deliver sessions on, let me show you how to use the stuff you already bought, Scott will be a good fit. Roger, who's a solution architect in the UK, he can be a good fit. There's a lot of people that came from the implementation world and became an employee for Microsoft, they would be great fits to deliver content like that. But as an organization, it has never really been a priority of Microsoft to do that. They've relied on other organizations to do that. So how is that going to play out when it comes to organizing events and planning virtual meetings and webinars and things like that? I am a little skeptical about it, but I'm also excited about it. I think that, we are positioned in a way to grow this thing, but it can also get out of hand if, you mismanage this thing. And I'm a little concerned about it from that perspective. Are you concerned about it? What do you think about today's episode? Like I mentioned, this has been recorded. The entire video is available on YouTube. By the time you're listening to this, you can go back and look for episode 102. Leave comments below. You can also leave comments at CRM MVP Podcast. And if you want to keep things private, you don't want to post public comments, you can always email me at info@crmmvppodcast.com. If you have any questions, comments, want to talk about it in private, feel free to do that. Some people also direct message me on LinkedIn. No problem. I'm happy to respond to that. I am easy to find. So any way that you can reach out to me, if you have a question, a comment, whatever, want to share your ideas, I'm looking forward to listening to that. Other than that, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in to episode 102 of the CRM MVP podcast. We will see you on the next one.